Hello, my name is K.E. Semmel. I'm a writer and translator, author of the Book of Losman and this Substack, Bright Boy, A Tourette's Life. As part of my ongoing series of interviews with folks in the TS community, I bring you interview number 2 with Greg Lawrence of the Ryan Lawrence Foundation. Hi, everyone, and welcome to my second interview here on my Substack, Bright Boy. Today we're going to have Greg Lawrence. Greg is a chiropodist in Ontario, Canada, and the founder of the Ryan Lawrence Foundation. Um, Greg, before we start with my questions about Ryan and the foundation, I want to ask about the word chiropodist. We've talked a little bit about it, and he basically told me something interesting about the word and about the field that you work in. So can you tell viewers what a chiropodist is?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Kyle, on your program here. Yeah, I'm trained as a chiropodist. I work in Ontario, Canada. Chiropodist is a title for a foot specialist, more commonly known as podiatrist. The title chiropodist was the original title for the profession, and I believe it wasn't until the 1940s in the United States they came up with the term podiatrist. And since that time, the rest of the world have adopted the term podiatrist, except Ontario. So we have legislation dating back, I believe, to I think it was in the 40s, and it says that there are two titles to the profession. And as of right now, anyone practicing in Ontario that calls himself a podiatrist are US trained and have been practicing in Ontario before 1993. So any new trainees, whether you're trained in Canada or abroad, any country, if you come to Canada or come to Ontario, sorry, and practice, you have to use the term chiropodist. So we've been lobbying the government trying to change the title for many years, but unfortunately, we've never got anywhere. So every other province and territory in Canada use the term podiatrist except Ontario. So it's an old term. A lot of people say chiropodist or chiropodist or any other variation, but what we were taught was chiropodist. And I believe going back in some of the history books, Abe Lincoln even had a chiropodist back in the day. So yeah, so it's an old term, and outside of Ontario, many people probably have never even heard it before.
Well, so that just really tickles the word nerd in me. And when you told me what that was and how to pronounce it, I thought, we got to start with this because that's just so fun. Um, but you obviously we're not here to talk, necessarily about your profession and chiropody. But I want, we met a year ago after I published the essay in HuffPost. You reached out to me and you introduced me to your story and the story of your son. And I don't want to share that story with viewers here. I want you to share that story. It's your story to tell. So can you tell us a little bit about Ryan Lawrence, uh, his 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 experience with Tourette syndrome and of course the foundation that you've founded uh, in his honor.
Sure. Um, yeah, Ryan was uh, born in 2001. As a youngster, he at a young age developed some signs of Tourette syndrome. We had him assessed, and he was diagnosed with Tourette's. Um, Really, he had some vocal tics as well as motor tics, and they weren't debilitating in any way at that stage. And he went through his elementary school and high school and was able to participate in a lot of sports. Academically did well, and only I think his closest friends really knew that he had Tourette syndrome. I believe he was playing hockey years after he was diagnosed, and he had long curly hair and wearing a helmet in hockey. He would sit there and flick his head back, getting the hair out of his eyes. And one of the coaches said to me, "Is there something wrong with his neck?" And I said, "No, no, no. It's a tick he's doing. He's got Tourette's." And they said, "Oh, we didn't even have any idea." So it really wasn't that noticeable amongst the public. And then in high school, it started to get as near as last year, high school, he started biting the inside of his lip. And it got to a point where that just took over all of his attention, and he had a hard time focusing in school because he was in pain. So not only was the tick trying to get him to, bite the lip, but he was in pain, which was distracting, and he couldn't, follow with the teacher at school. So that was the first time it got more severe. And then COVID hit. And then when that happened, he was, we were all sort of isolated and didn't have the contact with other people other than, over phone or video. And that's when the severe tics started happening. And he actually developed some very severe self-harming tics. And at the time, we were obviously concerned. We tried everything possible. We contacted international associations. We called doctors around the world. And throughout that time, Ryan was given various cocktails of medication to try and eliminate the tic or slow it down. Usually the medications more, we found it would more or less sedate him, and it really wasn't helping with the tics. And he felt the same. And we tried different therapies, and nothing seemed to help. He was young, and through his teenage years, really didn't commit to the therapies themselves. So it was usually try this for a few times, and him saying, "No, this is not working. I'm not going to do that." And so then over the COVID years, he started poking his eye. He was pushing on his eyelids, and he ended up damaging his cornea and had to have corneal transplants. And then he was pulling on his lips, and it was all self-harming, very damaging tics. And then he started shaking his head like I think he was shaking it back and forth. And he even at one point wore like a hockey helmet to bed just to try and stop him. And although it didn't work all that well, and through those years, it was just awful running back to hospitals and getting medication, getting his eyes fixed. He never gained full eyesight back. He ended up with one eye having damage in the cornea, so he couldn't see directly in front. So his eyesight was almost like an individual that might have macular degeneration. And the other eye, which was repaired by two corneal transplants, at that point they said it was healed and everything was good, although all he could see was blurred color. So he wasn't able to drive. He was very impaired in what he could do and what he could see. And then and then with the shaking of the head, he ended up concussing himself. And so his whole personality changed in the last year, going from a very angry 21-year-old to quite sedate and quiet, and you know um, just not angry anymore. His whole personality changed, and at that point, he couldn't function very well. He couldn't focus on things, so it was affecting his short-term memory tremendously. I couldn't drive anymore. So at that point, he things were very severe, and it ended up, although his Tourette's was really bad, he developed pneumonia and went to hospital, and within a few hours, unfortunately, passed away. And at that time, we didn't know what was going on. We knew he had the Tourette's, obviously, but when he passed, they did an autopsy and found he had a gene for cardiomyopathy. And so we've been tested, and both myself and my other son have the gene as well. So we'll be tested on a regular basis for that heart condition. But that's what took Ryan was cardiomyopathy. But his life and his everything had gone downhill so much. And the sad thing is, at the very end, he was saying, maybe I should go back to the therapies. I think I could give it a try now. So at 21, he was starting to realize that, this is going to be a lifelong thing for him, because at that point, usually you don't outgrow it when you're at 21. It's usually 17, 18, I think. So he realized that, his life was going to be hard. And, the only way he could do to help himself was to get some therapy. And so we were just about to start that when things went downhill with the pneumonia. So he battled hard and he fought all the way through. He was a very determined individual, and unfortunately we lost him, but in turn we've tried to keep his memory alive and run the foundation in his memory.
And well, let's talk about that, because one of the things that the Ryan Lawrence Foundation, I think, is one of the reasons it's so interesting obviously it's in Ryan's memory, and you're trying, would like to see that others who, follow in Ryan's footsteps, who have situations maybe very similar, don't have to go through what Ryan went through. And one of the ways that the foundation is doing that, I think, is pretty unique, and that it is partnering with Toronto Western Hospital on this partnership for research and development. Can you talk a little bit about this partnership and what you hope to achieve?
Absolutely. As I had said, like through Ryan's illness, I had reached out. There were specialists all around the world, and I'd reached out to, and they graciously would email me back. I mean, I got to know some of them quite well. I would say quite well. And one individual was Dr. Christos Ganos, who was one of the leading neurology clinicians and researchers for Tourette's. And he at the time was based in Germany. And I had talked to him about Ryan, and it just so happened that once Ryan passed away, I said, I want to start this foundation. So it took a year to get charitable status, and through the Canadian government, it's a fairly lengthy process, but we went through all that. And shortly after I started the foundation, found out that Toronto Western Hospital had recruited Dr. Ganos to come to Toronto and head up the Tourette's like movement disorders clinic and research on Tourette. And they had got him to come to Toronto, and they're in hopes that within 5 years, Toronto would be the hub for Tourette's syndrome in the world. And so, talking to Dr. Ganos, he has recruited doctors from around the world. He has, a list of doctors they communicate on a weekly basis. For the ones that are not able to move to Toronto, and he keeps in touch with all of them. And his research, I was speaking to him last week, and I think he's got 28 projects on the go. So he's a very busy guy. And so when he came to Toronto, he said, let's meet Greg. I want to talk about Ryan. And so first thing, we met for coffee, and first thing he said is, let's hear it. Tell me about Ryan. And he wanted to know. Very, very warm individual, very nice guy. And since then, he had told me what his goals were with Toronto Western Hospital and what they wanted to achieve. And they wanted to link with Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto and Toronto Western, and create an all-inclusive program, and research. And so first thing I'd said was, how much do you need to conduct like some research in this area? And so the first thing he wanted to do is, he said it's the first one done in its kind. The only one project like this was done in Sweden before. So it was going through thousands and thousands of patients' information, and looking at the quality of life of individuals with Tourette's, and finding data. And so he said, this is the first thing I want to do. And we had, through our charitable events, raised about $46,000. And he said that will cover a research assistant and access to this computer system that will accumulate and get the stats needed to conduct this research. So, it started there, and going through the process with the Canadian government, you have to outline exactly what your foundation wants to achieve, its missions, its goals. And so we decided that the goals of our foundation would be to help fund research, to help fund clinical studies, like clinical treatments, and advocacy, and a scholarship at Ryan's high school for a student that's graduating, going to post-secondary education, and has dealt with some adversity in their life throughout their high school career. So it started with Dr. Ganos, and then from there, we're now on a regular talking basis with the Toronto Western University Health Network Foundation, and on a regular basis. Yeah.
So the foundation raises funds for Tourette research.
Mhm.
And later this month, you have your annual golf outing and fundraiser. Can you talk a little bit about that fundraiser, and what's going to happen, and how people can help support it?
Sure. Yeah, we thought the first thing we could do is to start a golf tournament, and that was very successful. So we're the 27th of September, we're having our third annual golf tournament. which is being held at Granite Ridge Golf Course in Milton, Ontario. We've sold it the last 2 years, and as of right now, we were going to try and use a second course available at this golf course, but we've already sold out one course already. So, and we have Dr. Christos Gano speaking at our event. He's the guest speaker, as well as one of Ryan's best friends who's going to be talking about mental health with men. And we've got some ex-NHL hockey players that are coming. So it should be a great event like it has been. We've been sponsored well with companies around the area. From we usually have a silent auction, which this year we'll be doing online. I don't know. I could give you the link, Kyle. If I don't know,
Absolutely.
I don't know if I can. If I said it here, it wouldn't. People wouldn't be writing it down. But if I gave you a link, it's going to be held online, and it's going to end on Friday, September 26th at 7 o'clock. And in there, we've got original artwork. We've got hockey tickets. We've got, athletic, jerseys. We've had gift baskets donated. We've had barbecues. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that, we've had donated for this, and we do well with that as well. So it's a golf tournament silent auction. And at the golf tournament, we also have a 50-50 and um, have like door prizes and that at the event. So we do have companies that have donated goods, and we've had companies that have sponsored in the way of sponsoring a hole, which what we do is we advertise on social media, and we have a sign at the hole for the company. And if the person wants to be there and greet the golfers, they by all means can. And that's $500 for a hole sponsor.
Yeah.
So more information on that can be found on our website, but I'll also give Kyle other details for that if anyone's interested in helping us out. So that's our annual thing is the golf tournament. We have in May we were part of a fundraiser down in Washington D.C. for Tourette's as well, and so we're always looking at, we're sort of a small group. There's 8 of us on the board, and so right now I'm looking at getting involved with grants with foundations and other companies. But for the time being, our main fundraiser is the golf tournament.
Yeah. And I was there last year and really had a great time. And it was a really dynamic event. So I can imagine it sounds like it's going to be even more dynamic this year with all the newer guests and Dr. Ganos himself speaking.